Do you want to tell me a little bit about the lighting that the team used and what equipment they took?
So use more colour washes and stuff just because that's more interesting than a standard stage wash. And then I think kids would enjoy that more, like more colours, just makes the stage more interesting to look at. Then we used 2 road movers. So those were just handy because it adds, so we could use the gobos that are pre-installed in them to have shapes on the walls, which could add into certain scenes. Or like during the ball scene, we could have the lights flashing around or something, which gives it more arty atmosphere.
Excellent. And how was sound used? Was there sound effects, music, voices? How was the sound element working for the show? Was there a band?
No.
Performers on stage?
Yeah, just we had a guitarist or bassist on stage just to the right, so he was viewable by the kids, and he had his own amp set up. So that was just handy because having a live instrument is sometimes better, which adds another feeling.
And did the actors kind of play musical instruments as well during the shows?
So some of the actors who played rats would have stuff like kazoos or tambourines. So that would have been more entertaining for kids just because it adds more of a comedy side to it, especially the kazoo.
In the final set design, you talked earlier in the original idea about the cupboard and things, what made it to the final?
On the right hand stage of the set, we had a cupboard which had 2 levels to it. So this was a cupboard we originally took, so we varnished it, painted it, so it made it look more old-fashioned and run down. And then on top we installed a bookcase with a shelf in, and from behind you could slide a shelf in it, so they allowed one of the actors to peer through. And then in the bottom half, which was the proper cupboard, that was the one where we took out the back, added in a black sheet behind it so that you couldn't see through when it was open, added in some strings that you could pull it closed after you've gone through. So this just allowed actors to crawl through it.
Okay, can you give me an example of when you worked with the director?
So when we were first showing her our set, she was going through what she liked about it, what she thought we could improve on. And then later on, when we were talking, she was saying about how the stage needs to be more open because our original was quite small and compact. So then we improved on that and we added in the big flat. So it was just getting her suggestions on what she thought was better and what she didn't like.
Did you have to work with the actors directly at any point?
No, the only times that I could think of is when some sound effects had to be recorded.
Yeah, and once you got the set in the box, did they kind of come and try it out and get comfortable with the space?
Yeah, they kind of just walked around and did a run through, so we could see how they used it, and then we told them what they could do, like with the cupboard, how they could use that.
How do you think the tech team worked as a whole?
I thought surprisingly well, like just because some people on the course have more skill, so they took over some of the more important parts like production manager and lighting and stuff, which was better because they meant it came out better than it would have done if someone with no skill had done those. But yeah, I thought it worked really well. When we were packing away, we all worked as quick as we could and no one argued whilst we were at the schools because then that would just delay us and we'd be hanging around waiting for them.
If you talked earlier about kind of some of the schools being a bit of a maze, did you have to think about any health and safety stuff?
Yeah, so it was good because when we were setting up it was in lesson time, so there weren't kids running around us or anything. But just there was some odd kids walking by, so when we were carrying stuff like flats, the flats or something, we'd have to be careful we didn't hit a kid or even damage some of the school property since that isn't ours.
Excellent. When you were kind of building the set, what kind of construction or design techniques did you use? Did you use any kind of the machinery, or was it more kind of set dressing and wallpaper?
There was a window that I built that got used, which was just stuck onto on the back of the flats. So that took me just about a lesson to make. So I had to use some of the saws and the sanders to make that.
And what about the wallpaper thing? You talked about distressing that.
So for the wallpaper, we went over to Homebase and got that, and then came back. There wasn't much to that. It was just putting them up on the flats.
And you kind of distressed it, though, you were saying earlier. With
After we'd stuck it up, I took a scalpel to it and just cut in certain places to make it look as if it had been scratched off or something.
What do you think your strengths were on this project?
Working with other people, mainly, or the fact that if someone asked me to do something, I would just go do it. I wouldn't argue or anything, just because it's always handy to have someone who will happily go run out in the rain, run to the van, and go grab something for you if it makes it easier for you.
What advice would you give to students doing this next year? Anything that you learned, or
don't mess around.
Don't mess around.
Get your ideas done and make sure that the director approves of them, and don't leave it late. So yeah.